Welcome to the Thrive Podcast. I'm Dave Jones, and this is Jim Book. The purpose of our podcast is to offer practical ministry insight and leadership wisdom to help churches thrive in living out their mission in the world in which we live. How's it going this week, Jim?
Dave, I'm doing great. I just want to clarify, you're not the Davy Jones from the Monkees.
I am not.
I've had a lot of people ask me if you're the same guy, and it's like, I don't think so. But you want to clarify that for the audience real quick?
Well, you know, we have another preacher in our brotherhood named David Jones, and he's the Old Testament. The Old Testament Dave Jones. I'm the New Testament Dave Jones.
That's good. I like that.
I like that too. So each week, what we want to do in the podcast is sort of just identify some of the trends that you're seeing in churches today, the vision for where churches are headed, and biblically speaking, where the church should be. We want to be on mission as the Lord's church. So in your more recent travels, are you seeing anything that's sort of tending for you to be something that we should address today in our podcast?
I was in Bridgeport, Illinois, 2 times a year. Bill Cox, who's the preacher of New Hope Christian in Bridgeport, hosts what he calls the Wabash Bible Institute. And he'll bring in guest preachers and guest speakers from all over the country, and they'll do a 9-hour seminar over Friday and Saturday, which is exhausting, but it's great. And you get a chance to meet the preachers in Southern Illinois, some small churches, medium-sized. And then he asked me to preach for him Sunday morning. They run 2 services. Bill is a phenomenal guy. He's been trying to retire for probably the last 3 years. And they may be getting ready to interview, but he's just done a great job. But it was a wonderful church. But here's something they're going through. And I think maybe, David, you can probably testify to this better than I can. Part of the problem is when you follow someone that has left a legacy in the area and she's been there for years and years, it's hard to find someone to come in and fill those shoes. But Bill wants it. You, I believe, followed a gentleman at Millwood that had really left a huge legacy. How tough was that for you? Because whatever the next guy does for Bill is going to go through what you did. How difficult a challenge was that for you?
It was challenging. Let me give you a little quick story. The gentleman I followed is Gene Lilly. He had served here as our minister for 24 years. And I was a member in the church, a deacon, youth director, and went through some preaching classes and Bible college training. And when he was ready to retire, the elders approached me and asked if I would be interested in being the new evangelist in the church. And it wasn't on my radar, but after time, prayer, fasting, my wife and I said, yeah, let's do it. And at Gene's retirement service, one of the Timothys from our church who's preaching elsewhere, and many people thought that he would be the one that would replace Gene eventually. He's standing up there, he's giving all these accolades to Gene, what a great preacher Gene was, what a great job he did building his ministry here at Millwood. And he said, you know, over the years, I've had a number of people ask me if I would replace Gene when he retired from Millwood. And this is what that preacher said. He said, you'd have to be an idiot to follow Gene Lilly. Well, I'm that idiot.
I'm talking to the idiot right now. Congratulations. You're a good idiot, my friend. I'm glad you made that decision.
And so it's a big task to undertake, and you worry about their reputation. You worry about the things that they had in place, their traditions. But I had a really good friend the day after that retirement service who sent me a message, and he said, don't worry about filling Gene's shoes. Fill your own shoes.
Amen.
And so that's what I've tried to do. Gene did an incredible job helping to prepare me for ministry, but he did a great job also in preparing the church for his retirement. And I hope that's what's going on in Illinois with Bill.
Well, I think it is. And I will tell you this, Dave, for all those 60-year-old preachers, mid-60s, that don't think you still have some tread on the tires, Bill Cox takes that excuse away from everyone. And David, here's something you and I can appreciate because we both work for the CRA. You're on the board and I'm on the staff. Is this a good time for a commercial for the Restoration Herald, the CRA? Okay. They have the largest loan from the CRA.
Oh.
They just they built onto their children's wing. It is an elaborate children's wing. And Bill told me, he goes, Jim, thanks to the CRA, through the loan program that we have, he said, we borrowed the most and it's interest-free. And I said, Bill, CRA loves loaning money to churches that are growing and advancing the faith like you. And they have 2 services now, and it's a phenomenal work. So it was a great weekend. Absolutely.
So a lot of times when we look at preachers that are older, you know, I'm in my 50s and I'm looking ahead trying to
Sure.
figure out what that point is for me. We could go a lot of different directions with this conversation, but what Bill is doing is he's part of a thriving church and he's planning his exit. How does a guy know when that time comes, do you think, Jim?
That is a great question. And that was one of the biggest challenges that I had because I love located ministry. I had two churches over 30 years in Central Florida. And I always felt guilty, David, when other preachers talk about these horrible situations they face. And I face challenges, don't get me wrong. I mean, ministry is tough. I cried myself to sleep many a night. But I will tell you, if I could live it all over again, I'd do it again. It's been a great experience. I think for me, I really felt like I wanted to take the information, the knowledge, the experiences that I had in two great churches in Florida on the road. And I felt like I could take them, but I couldn't do both. Bring grandchildren into the scene. And so, transition becomes less challenging. But I think that, there's a time and a place for everything. And that season was coming up in my life and I was starting to entertain it. Jeanette and I were kind of looking for a new venue, new culture, new landscape other than Florida, because she grew up in West Palm. I grew up in Orlando. So that's kind of how we knew it was kind of time. And so, I mean, I think you're behind me, you're younger than me, but I think at some point every preacher comes to that place where he starts thinking about what the next chapter looks like. And for
Yeah,
us, that was it.
I want to be in that position where Bill is, in the sense that,
Absolutely.
and Gene was when he retired here, that the church was still moving forward.
Yes.
He knew he needed to change directions and that the church needed to change directions. And so there
Yes.
was sort of the sweet spot that occurred there. And when you look back to your time at Kissimmee, you knew you were going to leave long before anybody else knew. Those thoughts were probably creeping in your mind.
Well, I think I told you before
Yeah.
anybody else.
Early on,
So outside of my wife, you knew, because I needed some feedback from a brother, and that's why preachers need good brothers. And so I remember sitting down with you, David, going, "Tell me if this is crazy. This is kind of where I'm thinking." And you were a blessing. And so,
well, God provides, doesn't he?
boy, he does.
We entrust our paths to him and he leads us.
Amen.
That's the goal. So when you consider this frontal attack from both sides, if you will, where you've got a preacher like Bill or Gene or Jim that leave thriving churches, how do you, what would you say to a young preacher coming and following those guys? What are some tips that you would give to young preachers that are following them?
Well, first of all, I tried to prep the congregation before I left. I said, "Look, please don't assume the next guy is going to sound like me, preach like me, act like me. In fact, pray that he's different in every area. Okay, that he's
There's only one
normal. You pray, and that's a good thing. So let him be himself. Let him bring his style. And because to make him something else would be unfair to him and you. So I'm hoping that the guy who took my place, Dr. Grant, is filling in well. I try to stay as disconnected at some level as I can because, I don't want to get in the way. So I just kind of, have been on the outside looking in, but man, let him be himself. Let him take his personality, his style, and respect that and appreciate that. And sometimes the diversity and personality and style is healthy, right? I'm so much different than the preacher that I follow. Ross Pepper was an incredible orator. I mean, no, I say orator. He was a script preacher. His sermons were written out, but man, he could deliver as well as anyone. I'm a little different, but thankfully they took me in and made me feel like $1 million. And it was hard to leave that church because they were just our family. So yeah, let him be him. Let him be him.
And that's good. One thing Gene did so well as he prepared the church. Number one, when Gene left, he didn't create a vacuum.
Right.
And part of that reason is I always say it this way, that Gene just taught us the church isn't about the preacher, it's about our Savior.
Amen.
Always put our hearts on the Lord. But he also prepared the church for his departure long before he announced his retirement. I literally remember a sermon, and I had no designs on being the preacher here, as I said, but I remember a sermon when Gene made this comment. He says, I'm not going to be your preacher forever, but you better pay the next guy more than you're paying me. But he would say things like that because of credibility to do so.
Exactly.
So he used his credibility to protect his successor. And I've been blessed by that. And I live in a large shadow of Gene, and we all love him and talk about him. He passed away back in 2020. And I've been here now coming up on 20 years.
Man,
And
that's great.
it still feels like yesterday, that we made this transition. When I came in, I had another fella, he made a comment to me, he says, "Hey, listen, when you become the preacher there, don't change anything but your underwear for 6 months." Yeah, that's not original, but
Right.
it really gave me a sense that when I come in after Gene, I need to take things slowly and protect the people that were here from whiplash, if you will.
Yes.
I think that's
Now, I will say this, David. I've heard other ministers say, if you can come in and immediately build credibility, which is what you want to do, you want to build credibility your whole ministry, but try to experience. And I may have differ from you a little bit in this. I try to build a savings account of things that you do that work fairly quickly, because you're going to have a plan or a program that doesn't work, and it's going to exhaust some of that savings. But you don't want to be broke. So do things that bring credibility, that positive change. You're right. Don't do anything crazy overnight, because that people don't believe in you yet. They need time to believe in you, time to see your vision and to appreciate you. But if you can score some quick victories fairly
good.
soon, that adds credibility, and you build a savings account. A
Yeah.
preacher needs a spiritual savings account, because eventually you're going to do and say something, and it's going to bring that account down a little bit, but you don't want to have a zero balance
Yeah.
forever. Right. So some quick victories, some challenges that you can meet and celebrate together it builds credibility fairly quickly, I think.
Now, Jim, when you left Kissimmee, you moved hundreds of miles away to Alabama.
Correct.
So other than, digital communication, you're not a present person in that area anymore. But how important is it for the former preacher to give the new preacher some space? And maybe what does that look like for a guy that considers the church he's in his home church? He really
Correct.
doesn't want to leave, but should he leave? And how does he give him that space you talked about?
Okay. First of all, I remember telling my elders, hey, I will not call you guys but you call me anytime and I will answer the phone. I told some of our key staff people, like our associate or church admin, if you have any questions, call me. Our principal, call me of our school. But I said, I'm going to do you this favor. I'm not going to call you. And just because I don't want to be that shadow, I don't want to be that helicopter, retired preacher that's into everybody's business. And so they go, Jim, that's fine. So, when they call, I pick up on the first ring. But I said, if you wait for me to call you, you're going to grow old standing next to your phone. I know the preacher that preceded me. The elder said, hey, Ross, can you hold off a year? And he's like, sure. After a year, he started teaching Sunday school. I'm a huge believer in space. And so we did that, and moving as far away as we did kind of helped not
Yeah.
get involved. Now we've gone back and done some funerals, and we're going back in November doing a funeral and a wedding. I'm going to speak in chapel at the school, and that's great. But I have not been to a worship service yet. Looking forward to going back, but I wanted the new guy to get hired, get in there, and then go back and then enjoy him and everybody. So space is important for him and for you.
That's good. I remember Gene, my thought was Gene would stay on and be an elder. And Gene's personality was very different than mine. And he and I had a number of conversations, of course. And he says, I'm leaving for at least a year, sort of that Ross Pepper rule there.
Right.
And he said, I'm leaving a year. He said, I never want to be in a position where you do or say something I disagree with and somebody asks me my opinion. He says,
Yes.
I will not lie.
Yes.
I'll have to be honest with them in that way. So he wanted to protect. And what ended up happening with him in his career is he ended up going and preaching at two other churches for over the next 10 years, and then returned to Millwood toward the end of his life. And he and his wife still attends here. He has a couple daughters that are still in attendance here at our church, and 3 daughters actually, and a couple granddaughters. So we've been blessed.
I can't imagine anybody disagreeing with you on anything.
Well, yeah, and especially you, right? Yeah. So, but Jim, have you ever, in all of your travels and your interactions with churches, because your travels didn't just begin this year, you've been traveling
Right.
years
Right.
as evangelist and doing revivals. Have you ever seen where a church has effectively transitioned the old preacher becomes an associate or some other pastoral role, maybe an elder in the church. Have you ever seen that effectively work in your
Yeah, in
staff?
fact, I have, and that's an oddity because of what Gene said to you is really kind of the unspoken rule. You just vacate, leave because the tendency, and I know me, that's why I would struggle going back to the old church that I served because I don't know that I could keep my mouth shut. I'm to be like, hey, here's what we should do. So I know 100% exit and you guys do what you need to do. But I have seen where preachers have gone in and actually taken on an associate level role or as an elder. And like, for instance, the church I'm in right now, I'm at Central Christian where CJ Epperson is a mutual friend of both of ours. Great job. And the preacher that preceded him is the preacher's CJ's best friend, had lunch with him at CJ today. He is CJ's greatest advocate, and he was the preacher, very successful before CJ got here. And I thought, no jealousy. It's so funny you bring that up, Dave, because I was just with both of the
That's
guys
good to
an
hear.
hour ago at lunch, and I'm listening to Benny talk and his experience, and he can't say enough about CJ. CJ told me, he's like, Jim, I couldn't be where I am today if it weren't for the preacher before me. He is my biggest fan. And I went, man, someone has said, when you only care that Jesus gets the credit, then it doesn't matter how you feel about yourself. And I probably butchered that line. But anyway, but the point is they're not ego driven. And because they love each other, they love the church, they don't care who gets the credit, because
That's great.
theirs is Jesus is supreme. So funny you asked that question because I
That's
just
so cool.
experienced the best case scenario right here at Central Christian in Cynthiana.
So you had you didn't necessarily have a long-term plan for your career and even your income. Once you were leaving Kissimmee, the CRA thing came up after the fact.
Correct.
So for guys, and you're younger, I mean, you're not in your 70s or anything like
Yeah,
that.
I'm just a kid, right?
Yeah, you're just a kid still, got a lot of life left. So obviously there's financial issues that preachers have to be prepared for before they step
Correct.
away in that career. Besides making sure their finances are in order, based on your experience, what are some keys to that transition on the front side that guys need to take?
First of all, thank you for asking. I was blessed because Kissimmee Christian had one of the most lucrative retirement programs set up when we got there. So it actually, and I wouldn't say staff members stayed because the retirement program was so good, but they continued to add on to the program the longer you stayed. And I will tell you this, the staff at Kissimmee, a lot of those people have been there for many, many years. My associate, 25 years. That's
Man,
not because of the money. It's because they took great care of us. If you're in a church right now and you don't have some kind of retirement program, sit down with your leadership. Don't beat them over the head with it and say, hey, I want to be here, but at some point I'm going to get older and need to step down, and really have this conversation early on. And the younger you are, the sooner you need to have this conversation, because we're tired of watching guys grow old in the church. They live in a parsonage the whole time. Then they retire. They have no home, no equity, and no retirement. And it's not as bad as it was, but David, when I grew up, seemed to be par for the course. So make sure there's a quality retirement program in place. I was blessed. Number two, Jeanette, my wife's a nurse. So, nurses do pretty well financially.
you have the second income already.
I have a second income. Yes.
Okay.
We were in the iron and steel business I don't know if you knew that, Jeanette and I ironed a day. She stole at night. But the point is, that's been around for a while. Anyway, she's a nurse. She does very well. But then the CRA said, hey, we want you to come on, and you guys treated me very fairly. And our lifestyle changed. Our girls are all grown and moved on. So it's not like we have a lot of kids at home and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it was such a beautiful transition for me. And the way you guys took care of me, the way the churches I served took care of me, with Jeanette's job and income, it's great. So it's been a real blessing.
I know we're going to get the question. You mentioned the retirement plan that they had at Kissimmee. Without giving a long commercial or anything, was that through a local financial advisor? Are you aware? Or
it was a financial group organization that really put together a great program. Our director of our finances, our finance chairman, was a retired IRS auditor. And so every penny had to be accounted for, and that's good.
So he's a
But-
real Matthew in the church, a tax collector.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Although he's a staunch conservative. So, it's not like, but he really helped develop and others a program that was good for the preachers. And, David, we're blessed because we're a generation where elderships, for the most part,
Yeah, I think
long to take care of the preacher. I can remember it was the old line, Lord, you keep him. I think that thankfully has changed where churches are like, look, these guys, they want to have a family. They want to have retirement. They want to have a life after the located ministry. They like to have their own home. And in order to do that, we got to pay them fairly. And here's another thing, with the shortage of preachers out there, if you've got a good one, you better hang on to him like grim death, because I'm telling you, there's not a lot to choose from. And we've seen that. So if you've got a great one, love him. And one of the best ways you can love him is financially take care of him.
that's good. That's good. All right, Jim, we got to wrap it up here. Give me
Okay.
two takeaways for a preacher that has been in a long-term ministry that looks toward transitioning away. Two
Okay.
takeaways for them.
Takeaway one, you've been in a church for a long time. It's been a great church. Things are going well. Leave when the people can't believe you just resigned. Leave when you have their mouths open wide going, I never saw that coming, versus never thought we'd live long enough to hear you leaving. All right. Really. Number one. Number two, don't understay, don't overstay. Number two, and David, I think this is really cool for you. Brother Lilly really stayed long enough for you to kind of segue. It was a beautiful handoff. It was like the Joe Montana, Steve Young handoff. I decided, my exit was a little more cut and dry because we were ready to go. And so we kind of, we stayed. They said, can we not put a date on? I said, of course, leave it wide open, but at some point we got to put one on. So we probably left. We could, so we went away a year without a preacher, but now they've got one extending. That's great. So leave when they want you, leave before they want you to leave, stay, but don't overstay. That's
Yeah.
what I would say. Don't overstay. And if you can make the handoff smooth, it's better for everyone.
That's great. All right, one takeaway for the new guy who comes in to follow a long-term preacher.
Be yourself, be true to yourself. And you don't have to be like the other guy.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Thrive Podcast. Practical ministry insight and leadership wisdom to help churches thrive in living out their mission.